Welcome to part 8.5 of the Revealed Bible Study series on the spirit of prophecy. We are looking at test number 5, It Shall Come to Pass. This is where we're going to look at how the validity of a prophet is something that cannot be faked, or not for very long, because if you make a prediction and it does not come to pass, then that is one of the spiritual tests that disqualifies you from being a true prophet. And so today, I'm going to share some scripture with you, and we're going to look at if Ellen White passes this spiritual test of it shall come to pass. There's a statement made by Moses relative to the true and the false prophets. It's found in the 18th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, which in our consideration of rules for discerning true and false prophets may be designed as follows. Notice what he says. Moses speaking in verses 21 and 22 says, "And if you say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken?" So how do they distinguish right from true from false, that it's fake or from God? He says, when a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, so you can be a nobody, and you can say, well, the Lord told me this will happen. Notice what Moses says. If the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. So if somebody says, it shall come to pass, this will happen on this day, and it does not happen, you know it says, this is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him or believe him. That means this man has no power, he is not of God, or she is not from God, and do not believe them. They have spoken presumptuously, which is out of sin, out of a reliance of strength upon their own selves, and not by the faith of God. And so here, if it does not come to pass, they are not a true prophet. Does the Bible agree? Lamentations chapter 3 and verse 37, it says, who is he that hath said, and it cometh to pass when the Lord commandeth it not? They're saying, who is he who makes such a bold claim and then it doesn't actually come to pass? The Lord has not commanded them to say it. In Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 9, verses 5 and 6, it says, and when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, come, let us return, lest my father leave caring for the donkeys, and take thought for us. And he said unto him, behold now, there is in this city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All that he saith cometh surely to pass. It shall come to pass. Now let us go there. Peradventure he can show us our way that we should go. They were in the land of Zuph, and Saul knew that there was a prophet in the land, and he was seeking out where Samuel was, because everything that Samuel spoke was a more sure word of prophecy, that it would surely come to pass. And even the kings of the world knew this, even though they weren't Christian. And that's very important. Even the worldly powers and principalities will acknowledge when a prophet is true, because the most important test is, do they make claims that come true? And that is the test we're looking at. In Jeremiah chapter 28, verses 7 to 9, we see the same lesson in Jeremiah's day. Nevertheless, hear thou now this word that I speak in your ears, and in the ears of all the people. The prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms. They prophesied of war, of evil, and of pestilence, which is animal-borne diseases that mutate and affect humankind. And the prophet which prophesieth of peace, when the word of the prophet shall come to pass, then shall the prophet be known, that the Lord has truly sent him. This is an important lesson. He gives both the subjects that prophets are often prophesying about, and also the litmus test, the gold standard, the golden ratio of which a prophet should be identified by. And that is, when the word of the prophet shall come to pass, then shall the prophet be known in all the land. whether they be speaking against sinful countries to repent, whether they speak against great kingdoms, that is to arise, like Daniel saw the statue in Daniel 2, the kingdoms, the head of gold is Babylon, the arms and chest of silver, which are Medo-Persia, the kingdom that would come after Babylon. But Daniel saw the vision while King Nebuchadnezzar was still in power in the kingdom of Babylon. Daniel saw this vision all the way down to the feet mixed with iron and clay, which were the 10 nations of Europe that were the first nations to arise. He saw almost 2,000 years into the future from the time of that vision that God showed him, of the great kingdoms that would rule the world through those imperial ages. The prophets speak of war and evil and of pestilence, these diseases that would come upon the land. And so we actually going to see Ellen White talks about the rise and fall of countries, the rise and fall of kingdoms. She talks about coming warfare. She talks about evil in the land to watch out for. She talks about pestilences and diseases in the meat and the flesh of the animals that would kill people who ate them, like we're seeing today with COVID-19 in the year 2020. And she also prophesied of times of peace. And when these things shall come to pass, then shall the prophet be known. So I want to show you all an example of some of Ellen White's visions that have come to pass, and also one vision that hasn't yet happened yet that everybody should be aware of, especially those living in a certain city. So Ellen White, these are what's called the testimonies. There were 9 volumes written from the mid-1800s all the way to the year 1906, when the last volume was published, when she was done writing this in the first decade of the 1900s. And Ellen White wrote these books called the Black Books, or the Testimonies to the Church, volumes 1 to volumes 9. And in volume 9, now there are several visions through these, and in volume 9, a most significant vision was written to her on page 11 of volume 9. Page 11 of volume 9 of Testimonies to the Church. On 9/11, she was given this vision that she wrote on page 11 and volume 9. And I'm going to show you real quick here this vision, and this is all encompassing here.
I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. It was here a woman that lived over 100 years ago had a dream. In her dream, she saw an immense ball of fire come down on Nashville, causing instant destruction. Before you brush off or think the dream crazy, let us look at a few other dreams she had and see how they have already come true. In the 1860s, around 100 years before the Surgeon General of the United States revealed the dangers of tobacco use, she said this:
"Tobacco is a slow, insidious, but most malignant poison. In whatever form it is used, it is all the more dangerous because its effects are slow and at first hardly perceptible." Ministry of Healing, page 327.
In the history of the world, no non-essential habit ever got so entrenched so fast. 70 million Americans smoke. Today they got a message from the United States Surgeon General, who has had a blue ribbon committee studying their habit for 14 months.
Out of its long and exhaustive deliberations, the committee has reached the overall judgment that cigarette smoking is a health hazard of sufficient importance to the United States to warrant remedial action.
Over 100 years ago, she was shown and said this about the dangers of meat eating and how it was going to get worse.
Disease is contracted by the use of meat. The diseased flesh of these dead carcasses are sold in the marketplaces, and disease among men is the sure result. 18 MR, page 353.
Consumer Reports is ringing alarm bells this morning over pork safety. A new study shows chops and ground pork may be full of bad bacteria.
But in this case, it does, because it's America's first confirmed case of bovine spongiform encephalitis in 6 years. BSE is mad cow disease, a potentially deadly brain-wasting infection that can be transferred to humans.
In the 1880s, she published what she was shown would happen between Protestants and Catholics, even though they had been at war in some cases for hundreds of years.
Roman Catholics and Protestants shall unite. Great Controversy, page 578.
Because in 1999, the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Lutheran Church signed an agreement that brought an end to the protest.
It was in 1991 when I started to hear about her quotes given almost 100 years before. It was shown to me and many others that the Twin Towers in New York would one day be destroyed. The following video is what one preacher said in 1999 about the Twin Towers and what would soon happen.
Oh, brothers and sisters, and our only safety is not to get plenty of water for Y2K. Oh, she prophesied it. It's not to get a bunch of food preserved and stored up, but our salvation, my heart, is my heart right with God? I mean, for God to give us such a precious gift, what are we going to tell God? What would we tell God if we are lost? This world is sick, brothers and sisters. The Twin Towers. She saw the Twin Towers in vision in New York, and she saw that something knocked them down. She said it looked as though an angel took a finger and it crumbled into little stones.
On one occasion, when in New York City, I was in the night season called upon to behold buildings rising story after story toward heaven. These buildings were warranted to be fireproof, and they were erected to glorify their owners and builders. Higher and still higher these buildings rose, and in them the most costly material was used. 9T, page 12. The scene that next passed before me was an alarm of fire. Men looked at the lofty and supposedly fireproof buildings and said, "They are perfectly safe." But these buildings were consumed as if made of pitch. The fire engines could do nothing to stay the destruction. The firemen were unable to operate the engines. 9T, page 13. But I have no light in particular in regard to what is coming on New York. Only that I know that one day the great buildings there will be thrown down by the turning and overturning of God's power. From the light given me, I know that destruction is in the world. One word from the Lord, one touch of His mighty power, and these massive structures will fall. Scenes will take place the fearfulness of which we cannot imagine. Review and Herald, July 5th, 1906.
Let us now focus on what's coming on Nashville. Let's look at a few of the details that she saw would take place in Nashville. She even talks about a building where the ball of fire would impact and how it would branch out from this building.
While I was in Nashville, a scene was opened before me. A great ball of fire seemed to fall from heaven, and from it went forth flashes of light. When these flashes of light would strike a building, the building would burn like tinder. And then I heard someone say, "I knew that this was coming. These are the judgments of God that I knew were coming." "You knew," said another. "You were my neighbor. Why did you not tell me that these things were coming? Why did you not warn others?" MS 154.
Based on a careful study of the details she gives, it can be shown that no other building in Nashville can fit the dream better than the Parthenon in Nashville's Centennial Park. The ball of fire will branch out from here.
An immense ball of fire that had come from heaven, and it fell where they were casting buildings with pillars. Especially the pillars were presented to me. And it seemed as if the ball came right to the building and crushed it. And they saw that it was branching out, enlarging. And they began to cry and mourn and wring their hands. MS 152.
Many want to know, when is this ball of fire coming down on Nashville? She saw that those that knew it was coming did not know it was coming so soon.
The night before last, a very impressive scene passed before me. I saw an immense ball of fire fall into the midst of some beautiful mansions, causing their instant destruction. I heard some say, We knew that the judgments of God were coming upon the earth, but we did not know that they would come so soon. Others said, "You knew? Why then did you not tell us?" We did not know. On every side I heard such words spoken. Letter 217.
It was in July of 2015, on the 100th anniversary of the death of the woman that had the dream, that her estate released her writings to the public about Nashville. No one knew until 2015. So according to the dream, it must take place soon after July 2015. Some may ask, why is this going to happen? The woman that had the dream makes this statement.
I am instructed that when the Lord's time comes, should no change have taken place in the hearts of proud, ambitious human beings, men will find that the hand that had been strong to save will be strong to destroy. No earthly power can stay the hand of God. No material can be used in the erection of buildings that will preserve them from destruction when God's appointed time comes to send retribution on men for their disregard of His law and for their selfish ambition. 9T, page 13.
Jesus said in John chapter 14 and verse 15, "If ye love me, keep my commandments." And who was the woman that had these dreams? Ellen G. White, the most translated author in history.
So you see, folks, she's already had multiple things come true. She prophesied the diseases in the animal meat that came true, just like the pestilences in the Bible. She prophesied of the destruction of the Twin Towers in 9/11. And if you don't believe that, go find this volume of books. You can buy these on the internet. These books are old. They were written over 100 years ago. And these were reprints. These were published in the 1940s, still almost 80 years ago now. And you can go and look them up and look. The vision starts on page 11, and it goes from page 11 to page 13, where she's given all the details about New York City and the Twin Towers being destroyed on a certain day. And all of this stuff has come to pass. She's a true prophet. She's passed the first 5 tests so far. There is more to come. The test number 6 is miracles are unnecessary. Does a prophet have to perform miracles? Find out in part 6.